Thanks everyone for joining the session today. So we're going to work through the SWMS module. We're going to focus on the actual creation of the swim itself. So we're looking at how we identify the work that's within the actual, in this case, we'll look at just a very basic example, which is going to be changing a tire, but it's more process driven, which is why we'll focus on that particular example. We're going to then list the hazards, and we'll also look at how we can describe the control measures that sit within that particular method statement. There is an element of approval that goes through this particular record module. So we'll look at the workflow as well and notifications that are generated. As Sarah has said, you can ask questions just using the Q&A panel button. And also the video is going to be sent out to you as well, so you can always refer back to it. So we'll make a start just from the SWMS module. We'll go into new record. And I'll just expand the form to cover the record list. So just having a little look, first of all, at the sections that we've got available within the form. So if I go into collapse all, you can see now that we can see a bit of a summary of those sections. Select details, and that's going to expand that initial detail that we're going to capture regarding the swim itself. So like I said, I'm going to keep it simple with the actual example that we'll work through. We'll call this one changing a tire. And you'll see that we've got a series of fields to complete that are text-based. 2 of those fields are mandatory. And as you'll know with myosh, it's very easy to configure names of fields. It might be that we want to make this particular client field mandatory. All of those changes can be made by the system administrator very easily. In the valid to field, I'm going to say that this is valid until the 26th of June. And you can see automatically it's placed in Angela Adminson as having prepared this particular record, and that's because she's logged in. In addition, you will be able to select any other user from the employee list as applicable. Any particular legislation that this might apply to can be selected from the drop-down list. And what you'll see for this particular type of field is that you can add in additional legislation values as applicable. Any management plans is exactly the same. So we can see we've got environmental all the way down to safety. And we can select additional, which will just show beneath the actual field itself. In the training section, we can see that we've got the list of available trainings that will be required for this particular SWMS. Any permits, stored energy, physical movements, etc. So these are all fields that are standard within our default module. And once we move past the details actual section, we get to the assessment area. So this is where we build either the steps or the hazards that form within the swim itself. You'll see at the very top where we've got this type selection. Depending on which option we select, we're going to see a slight variation in the list of fields available to us. So if we first of all look at hazard, for example, so in the hazard details, it wants us to enter in the potential hazard. Using the please select, we would enter in the initial risk rating. And then what we would need to do is place in our controls. Like I say, this is purely just a fictitious example that I'm putting in today, just to give you that context of how the functionality works really. In the residual risk, we would then, once the controls have been put in place, readdress the actual risk and assess it. So choosing the please select option. And then what we can do is select who that accountable person for that particular hazard is. Select submit, and that will return us back to our SWMS record, where we're able to continue and build in the remaining list of hazards. So let's go through that one more time. Add another step. Choose a hazard again. Again, we're going to select that initial risk rating. We'll place this in as a high. List the controls. And then reassess that risk. You'll see as well that we do have the help features, which, although it's only available on the 2 risk matrix fields, you can apply that at any field level within your actual form. So any administrator can go in and add supplementary information to just assist people in the completion of this particular section. So when we select submit, it returns us back to our SWMS record. So we will continue with that particular process. Final one I want to show you is just how it looks when we go into the step section. So what we'll be able to see is that we have the step number, and we're able to place in the details, and once again we have the hazard. And then we'll select submit. So you can see how it lists them in the order that we've entered them in. As we continue moving down the form, the next section is the supervisor. So this would be the person that we're going to submit this particular SWMS record for approval. Looking at the very bottom of the workflow options, we can see that it tells us that it's going to submit it for approval. If we were to use the save option, then that's just going to keep it in this instance in a draft status. Select submit for approval. A notification is then generated. It goes to the supervisor, notifying them of the SWMS that they need to review, and also it copies in the person or persons who has prepared the actual record. It's now pushed it to pending approval. So if we look at this from the perspective of the supervisor, let's open up that particular record, select edit, and then you can see that they can review all of the detail regarding the SWMS that's been put in place, along with each of those hazards or steps. So it would simply just be a case of selecting that particular record from the list and then just reviewing each one individually. The next step would be for the supervisor to approve and sign off. So this is where they give the date of issue for the SWMS, and any other attachments can be added as necessary. Selecting approve is going to once again send a notification. This time it will go to the prepared by. It CCs the supervisor for their records, and you'll see that it's now pushed the status to approved. Now, once our work has completed and the SWMS is no longer required, what we are able to do is archive that record. Now, just before we do, you should see that we have available to us, once it's been approved, this export to Word field. So we're able to export fields that have been mapped for us, and this is something that you will be able to have configured for you by somebody in myosh. And you can pick out the fields that you want it to map. So you can have your company logo, and it essentially exports it into a Word template for you. So this is a little bit blank because the lack of detail that I've placed in, but you can see that for the management plan, it's pulled through the field information that we placed in. It's also got the supervisor's name and the issue date. And then as we move down the template, we can see a list of the hazards and step numbers. So like I say, for the actual option to export it to Word, it would simply just be a case of you providing us with the actual template that you would like to use in Word, and then we will map those fields for you in myosh. So as I said, once that has been completed and there's no further requirement for this particular SWMS, then we can submit it for archive. At this stage, we can't actually attach any photos to the job steps. It has been raised, so potentially in the future that might be something that we see developed. And just to answer the question regarding adapting a pre-existing template, absolutely. So as a business, you would send us your actual requirements for the template, and then we would just map to the fields based upon what you've sent through. So I'll select this to submit for archive. At this step, it will go to appending, and then the supervisor would go back in, select edit, and the final step would be to archive this record. Any archived SWM records are going to move to the archived step. So that means that we can still have access to them, but they just don't clog up the actual record list. So if I select yes, then we can see it sitting in this list. As with all of your records within and all of your modules within myosh, you do have that ability to use your record list to filter as required. You also have those optional record list sorts available to you, and you can use the save view functionality so that you can save a list of default views, maybe for particular site record SWMS, whatever's required. Finally, you can look at the SWMS records in a calendar view. So you'll see that it will place it on for the date of issue. Or you can simply just keep it as a record list. Okay, are there any other questions that are coming through?
We have a question from Dean, and he's asked, are you able to adapt to pre-existing template?
Yeah, so just to answer that one, you can send us your pre-existing template and we would then map the field. So as long as you send that to us, then we would just map it accordingly. And with regards to the photos on the jobs, at this stage, we can't add those to the template.
Can we save them into departments or business units?
So correct, you will be able to have your hierarchy defined at whatever level is needed. So by default, it is at a site level, but that can be changed using the administration functionality.
Dean asks, will the uploads be charged at a historic upload?
Yes, so if you've got some SWMS that you would like us to upload, we can get you a quote to upload that information for you. I would like to just point out as well, though, you can easily upload and import your records into myosh yourselves as well. So that might be something to explore instead of going via the support desk.
Maybe we should have a webinar, a training session on that.
Yeah, not a problem. And I've just opened up the form editor for SWMS. So the person who asked about the business unit or department, it would simply just be a case of selecting your hierarchy level that you want to display within the form. So just toggle one of those options as needed. And then once you save the record, it will show within the SWMS record.
So Ryan asks, can we modify this to create safe operation procedures as a subset of SWMS?
I'm not too sure on that one. How would it sit within the form itself? I'll need to come back to you on that. I'll speak to somebody internally. Ryan, if you can leave your email address, please, we can just place it in and we'll come back to you.
Okay, Ryan, if you just want to send that in by the chat, I'll send it on to Catherine. All right, well, we don't have any other questions at the moment. As I said, we will send a recording out. And thank you, Ryan, for that. And that should be it. Thanks, Catherine. So next week we are doing, let me just check which we've got next week for training. Equipment maintenance. Yes. Right, and then we'll announce a few more after that. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and hope you have a great day. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.